In this lesson, we are going to look at the processes which are involved in coordination in our body. You know that the coordination is a very important process which is happening in our body. So, this coordination is mainly done by the two systems in our body, the nervous system and the endocrine system. So, these two systems are different, but they integrate together in order to coordinate our body. If we look at the nervous coordination, it's mainly done by the nervous system. If we look at the evolution of the nervous system, the simplest animal with nervous systems are the Darians. They have the nerve net. So it's like a series of interconnected nerves. So more complex animals have nerves are bundles that consist of the axons of multiple nerve cells. So, if you have a look at the neuron, that's the structural unit of the nerve. So, you can see that there is a cell body in there and there is an axon, and the axon is covered with a myelin sheath, and at the end, there is an axon terminal. So, this is mainly responsible for the transportation of the impulses. Here you all can see how the nervous systems differs in different kinds of organisms. If you take the Hydra first, you all can see that the Nidarians actually they have the nerve net, so it's like a series of interconnected nerves. And if you take the sea star, they have a nerve net where each are connected by radial waves to a central nerve ring. So it's like actually a ring system. The planarians or the flatworms, they have a brain and longitudinal nerve cord. So they have the longitudinal nerve cords. The Annelida and the Arthropoda, they exhibit a little bit similar. They contain brain, they have a ventral nerve cord and segmented ganglia. And if you take the vertebrates, they have the brain, the spinal cord, nerves and ganglia. So for the vertebrates, the spinal cord is very important feature in vertebrates. Here you all can see the nerve net of the hydra. You all can see that it's been spread all over the body. And the sea star, the nerve ring, you all can see how the radial nerve is going to be connected to the nerve ring, which is in the middle part of that creature's body. Here you all can see the planarians have the longitudinal nerve cord, and where the leech or the annelids they have the ventral nerve cord. Human nervous system consists of two systems, the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. So if you take the central nervous system, it consists of the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system consists of the cranial nerves, spinal nerves and also ganglia. The spinal cord and the brain develops from the embryonic nerve cord of the embryo. Here you all can see the vertebrate nervous system, the central nervous system, which comprise of brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system. You all can see the cranial nerves. So there are 12 pairs emerging from the brain, and you all can see the ganglia outside of CNS and the spinal nerves. So there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves branching from the spinal cord. Two specific color regions can be found in the brain and the spinal cord. So the two regions are the gray matter and the white matter. Usually the gray matter consists of neuron cell bodies and the white matter consists of the bundles of myelinated axons. So if you take a longitudinal section of the brain, you can see that the gray matter is at the peripheral part and the white matter is inside the brain. The brain and the spinal cord contains hollow structures. The ventricles in the brain and the central canal of the spinal cord is a hollow-like structure. So these hollows are filled with cerebrospinal fluid. It's very important because this fluid is going to act as a cushion to the brain and the spinal cord, and it's going to protect from damages. Actually, it's actually acting as like a shock absorber. Basically, three embryonic regions are found in all vertebrate brains. The three regions are the forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. Here, the large area of the brain consists of the cerebrum, and then you can see the thalamus. Below the thalamus, it's the hypothalamus, and at the end, the pituitary gland is being situated. So, these four parts include in the forebrain. And you can see the midbrain, it consists of the brain stem, and the pons, medulla oblongata, and the cerebellum consist of the hindbrain. If you have a look about the cerebrum has right and left cerebral hemispheres. So each hemisphere consists of a cerebral cortex, which is the gray matter. They overlie above the white matter and basal nuclei. So in humans, the cerebral cortex is the largest and most complex part of the brain. So this part is responsible for the intelligence of the humans, usually the memory, the logical thinking, analysis, speech, and also involved in emotions. And also it responds to temperature and pressure. These two hemispheres are divided by corpus callosum. So it's actually a white color mass. So the right half of the cerebral cortex controls the left side of the body and vice versa. Each side of the cerebral cortex has four lobes: the frontal, temporal, occipital, and parietal. The frontal lobe is responsible for abstract thinking. The temporal lobe is responsible usually for the smell, hearing, and auditory. And the parietal lobe is responsible for sensory and also for the speech. And then the occipital lobe is responsible for the visual. If you have a look about the functions of these parts, if you take the thalamus first, this is the main input center for sensory information to the cerebrum. So also, it's the main output center for motor information leaving the cerebrum. If you take the hypothalamus, it regulates homeostasis. For example, responsible for regulating body temperature, regulating thirst, regulating appetite, and also it regulates sleep and wake cycles. Also, it initiates the fight or the flight response, and also it plays a role in sexual behavior. And if you take the midbrain, it acts as a relay station. So if you take a relay station, the meaning of a relay station is like impulses exchange between brain and spinal cord, and also it coordinates auditory and visual reflexes. If you take the pons, actually the Latin word of the pons, actually the meaning of the pons is the bridge. It's a Latin word, so it's like a bridge. It's going to transfer information between peripheral nervous system and the midbrain, and also it regulates respiration along with medulla oblongata. If you take the medulla oblongata, it contains centers which control several functions, including breathing, cardiovascular activity, swallowing, vomiting, and digestion. Then we'll have a look about the functions of the cerebellum. So you all can see that it's situated in the back side of the cerebellum is important for maintaining balance of the body, and also it's involved in learning and remembering motor skills. For example, learning to ride a bicycle, likewise. So it's involved in learning and remembering motor skills. The peripheral nervous system transmits information to the central nervous system and from the central nervous system and regulate movements and the internal environment. So the uh, peripheral nervous system contains two different types of neurons. You can see those two are the efferent neurons and the afferent neurons. So again, these efferent neurons, there are two systems, the motor system and the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic nervous system again can be divided to three divisions: sympathetic division, parasympathetic division and the enteric division. The afferent neurons transmit information to the central nervous system, and efferent neurons transmit information away from the central nervous system. The two functional components of the peripheral nervous systems are the motor system and the autonomic nervous system. If you take the motor system, it carries signals to skeletal muscles and it is voluntary. And this autonomic nervous system regulates the internal environment in an involuntary manner. So those two are the differences between the motor system and the autonomic nervous system. Again, if you take the autonomic nervous system, it has the sympathetic, parasympathetic and enteric division. But your stage, we are just looking at the sympathetic and the parasympathetic divisions. So if you take this sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions, they have antagonistic effects on target organs. So this antagonistic means the opposite. For example, if you take the sympathetic situations, prepare the body to deal with exciting or stressful situations and energy generation situations, for example, flight or fight. And the parasympathetic division causes opposite responses that promote calming or a return to self-maintenance functions, for example, rest and digest. And see the opposite functions carried out by the parasympathetic division and the sympathetic division.